they deeply desire this while approaching their feminine embodiment through a masculine paradigm where they think it's one more thing to put on their to-do list, one more practice or ritual to check off. And if you are still approaching the feminine from this lens, then you are nowhere close to truly embodying the sacred feminine. The sacred feminine is all about moving and listening to our body, where we get to become deeply nourished, where we literally get to prioritize slowness, where we get to prioritize our intuition. And so many women I know struggle with this so deeply because they won't allow themselves to slow down. They live their day. Welcome back to the Shadow Priestess Embodied. I'm your host, Kaylin Rakowski, and thank you for joining me today for another deep dive and exploration into your inner world, into your body, the shadow realms, where we will begin to explore some of these esoteric principles and really begin to drop them down into modern day application and embodiment. This is a sacred place where you can begin to truly meet yourself, meet your medicine, and to meet your magic. This is a place of remembrance. Take a deep breath and let's begin. Welcome back, you beautiful humans, for another episode of the Shadow Priestess Embodied podcast. I'm your host, Kaylin Rakowski, and I'm so glad that you're back. So, what I really want to dive in with you all today is really just feminine embodiment. And I know we talk about all things feminine, but today I want to kind of talk about the blocks and what I see that really keeps us from deepening into the sacred feminine and reclaiming our feminine essence and energy. So, what I've noticed is that so many people who desire to embody more of their feminine energy really are desiring a life of ease, a life of pleasure, returning to slowness, returning to the subtle. And this sounds like it would be an easy task, right? However, we are so deeply programmed and conditioned into a paradigm of toxic productivity, of toxic masculine constructs, where we feel like our worthiness, our value is so contingent on what we do or what we have done. So every single day, we jam pack our calendars from morning to night, going from thing to thing to thing, where we're so busy doing in our lives that we hardly ever are being present in it, right? Can any of you relate to this? And so much about returning to the feminine and reclaiming this part of ourselves is returning to slowness, where our sense of value, our sense of worthiness isn't contingent on what we do, but who we are. It's disconnecting the doing from the being. The feminine calls us back into the body. She calls us back into the present. She calls us back into living a life of pleasure, of slowness, of ease, where the feminine thrives on spaciousness, on stillness, openness, receptivity. And so many clients or people I know get so frustrated because they deeply desire this while approaching their feminine embodiment through a masculine paradigm where they think it's one more thing to put on their to-do list, one more practice or ritual to check off. And if you are still approaching the feminine from this lens, then you are nowhere close to truly embodying the sacred feminine. The sacred feminine is all about moving and listening to our body, where we get to become deeply nourished, where we literally get to prioritize slowness, where we get to prioritize our intuition. And So many women I know struggle with this so deeply because they won't allow themselves to slow down. They live their days constantly bypassing their body, the signals when they're being cued to rest, to nourish themselves. And this always leads to burnout, to a complete collapse, or, even where you'll notice your business, your relationships, everything begins burning to the ground because you don't have a stable foundation for it to live on. And something I always like to remind my clients is like how you create something is the same energy that it will take to sustain it. So if right now you're approaching your feminine embodiment, your business, whatever it is, from this lens of scarcity, of hustle, you know, you're going to have to keep in that frequency to maintain it. So, why would we not want to build a foundation in which our feminine can thrive, where we create these energetic scaffoldings for our deep feminine to have space to play, to be expressed, to be heard, and to be witnessed? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because yesterday I had a client who had to reschedule, and it created some space on my calendar. And I noticed that my body, my intuition, my feminine was deeply desiring to take a bubble bath. And I noticed this inner resistance where I felt like my mind knew better than my body, that I wasn't allowed to take a bubble bath in the middle of the day, and that I should be using that time to work on my work. And thank God for awareness, right? I would say my awareness has literally become my superpower. And I noticed this inner dialogue. I noticed this part of me that was so judgmental or so resistant to what my deep feminine, my muse was craving, which was nourishment, which was relaxation. So even though I had the mind chatter, even though I had some of these old patterns and wounds come up as we all do, I chose to honor myself. I chose to honor my feminine. I chose to honor my body. And I allowed myself to take the most juicy, delicious bubble bath. Okay. It sounds simple, but it doesn't mean that it's not profound because in that moment, I took an energetic vote for who I was and the life that I was deeply desiring to create. And it really had me thinking about how many women constantly bypass this part of them, this innate wisdom, right? Their intuition, right? Their feminine energy, where every time where we bypass her, every time where we don't take space to listen and to receive her, it's literally creating more disconnection and discord between us and this part of ourselves, where we become so separated that in times when we do create the few minutes to meditate or to do our practice or whatever it is, it's like we can't access her. And returning to the feminine is so much about recalibrating and reattuning and reprogramming not only your mind, but your body to begin to move and to create in this way, where we come back into our bodies, we come back into the subtle, and we really allow this inner voice to be our guide. And what truly gets to happen when you let the feminine take the reins, when you allow this part of you to lead, even if it doesn't make logical sense, even if your programming conditioning believes that you should be or you need to be doing anything else, coming home to your feminine is about how deeply you can begin to trust yourself and to follow these nudges, to follow these curiosities, to follow these desires, and what really gets to unfold and take place in your life when you come back into recklessly trusting yourself and trusting your feminine embodiment. And I think the most beautiful thing about this is that you always have a choice. You have the ability to begin to deeply honor the feminine, to honor your body, to begin giving it the reverence it deserves. And so many of us forget that it is our daily choices that really create this connection to the feminine. How you're starting your morning, how you're spending your time, You know, where are you continuing to bypass the feminine? Where are you continuing to just fill your day with so many things when you could begin to prioritize slowness? Where you could begin to create space, where you could begin to follow more of your curiosities, your desires, adding things that bring you pleasure. And this doesn't just have to be a sexual thing. It could be taking the slow bubble bath. It could be taking a dance class. It could be taking time every day to paint, to write, to create, whatever it is that awakens that inner muse. But the choice is yours. So if you're someone who feels like you're living your life on fast forward, who feels like you're jumping from thing to thing to thing, how can you take this episode as an invitation to deeply explore your feminine essence and energetics? Where can you begin to attune to the subtle, to hear the whispers, to hear the nudges of your intuition and follow it without judgment, without hesitation, right? Without doubt. And just noticing as you begin to relax and lead with this part of you, how your life begins to transform, how you as a person begin to shift, even without anything in the external having to go with you, how deeply you get to come back into wholeness, reclamation, recalibration with your feminine through choosing to live a life that no one understands, for choosing to go off the beaten path, for choosing to truly honor yourself, come home to your vessel, honoring that you as a feminine essence being are a temple. You are sacred. And what in your life really gets to shapeshift and transform as you reclaim this most sacred and innate part of yourself. If you're a woman who struggles with worthiness, with feeling enough, and really allowing yourself to be seen, this is literally my sweet spot and where I love to guide my clients through to help women redefine their relationship with their power, with their magic, and truly begin to live a life that is in alignment, that is fully expressed in their essence, and really which leads you to liberation, prosperity, and to deepen into your purpose. I recently have opened a few select spaces for one-on-one deep feminine mentorship and will be reopening the doors to my group mastermind emergence. Click the link in the bio to apply. I can't wait to connect.